In Shevii of Parshas Mishpatim, Pasuk Perek Chavdalad Pasuk Yud Beit, Vayomer Hashem Moshe alei hahara v'hayesham. Go up on the mountain, v'etnel lecha et luchot ha'evan. That's where I'm going to give you the luchot, and Vayokam in Pasuk Yud Gimel. Vayokam Moshe. So Moshe, who was instructed to go up, Vayokam Moshe v'Hoshua misharso. Moshe got up to go up, and he's getting up from the meal that they had with the Ziknei Yisrael, and Moshe gets up, v'Yoshua misharto, and Yoshua misharto. Vayal Moshe el har ha'elokim. Moshe goes up on the mountain. V'el hazkenim amar, but to the zkenim, Moshe says, Shvu lanu bozeh ad asher nashuv aleichem. You stay here. You sit here, as it were. You stay here until we return. In other words, he knows Yoshua is going with him. Ad asher nashuv aleichem. And Moshe, of course, goes up alone on the har. Rashi raises the following point. Vayokam Moshe v'Yoshua misharto. Rashi says, Lo yodati mativo shel Yoshua kan. What's Yoshua doing here? First of all, Yoshua was not directed to do anything. Moshe was supposed to go up on the har, and Yoshua is not going to go up on the har. What is Yoshua doing here? What's the issue of Yoshua? Now, when Rashi says, as he does occasionally, I don't know what something means, so of course, Rashi is like any good educator. When he says he doesn't know, he is trying to get, he really doesn't know, but he's trying to get the reader, or better yet, the listener, the Talmud, and we're all Talmidim of Rashi, to try to figure out what could this mean. In other words, this is really up to us. But Rashi does, in this case, say, V'omer ani, however, I say. In other words, Rashi is saying, this is not based on Chazal, right? V'omer ani, shehoya haTalmid milave l'Rav, that the Talmud was accompanying the Rav, ad mekom hagbalat tchumei hahar, until the point where the mountain was, as it were, fenced off, that you couldn't go up on the mountain. Sheina rashay leilech misham v'hala, because he wasn't permitted to go beyond there, implying that if he were, he would have gone along. Okay, but the main thing is, but since he can't go up, and the mission is to go up on the mountain, what's the point of his going with Moshe? So Rashi says, one word in Rashi I think is very important here. Every word in Rashi is important. But Rashi says, V'omer ani shahaya, doesn't say shahaya Yoshua. He says the reason he is going is shahaya haTalmid melav Rav, because it's not based on he's going to go up on Har Sinai with Moshe and experience whatever it is and learn along with Moshe Rabbeinu, but from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Torah. But rather, haTalmid melave, he's accompanying the Rav. Now, what is the idea of the Talmud accompanying the Rav? Well, you could say it's simply kavod, right? You have to show kavod, so there's livui. But I would like to go one step beyond that, and that is that when we think of learning something, so we think that the Rebbe, the teacher, tells us here this pasuk says this, and this is what we should understand, or there's a tosos here and we have to understand there's a problem, and so on and so forth. But there is something else that is even greater than learning, and that is what the Gemara says in Brachos. What do you mean greater than learning? Okay, the Gemara says, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan says that Gedola Shimusha Yoser Milimuda, that the service of Torah, in other words, the service of serving the Talmid Chacham, is greater than the study of Torah. And the Gemara says that is the pasuk in Malachim Beit, that Po Elisha ben Shaphat, that the king of Yehoram, the son of Achav, wants to go to war, and he wants to join Yehoram. This is Yehoram. He wants Yehoshaphat, the king of Yehuda, to join him, and the false prophets assure Yehoshaphat that they'll be successful. But he says, "Is there no Navi Lashem here? I'm not going to rely on these false prophets." So Yehoram says that yes, there is Po Elisha ben Shaphat. There's Elisha. Asher yotzak mayim al yedei Eliyahu. He poured water on Eliyahu's hands. Lamad lo nemar. It doesn't say that he learned Torah from Eliyahu. It says that he poured water. He served him. He was his attendant. So you see that the service of the Rebbe, the service of the Talmid Chacham, is greater than the learning of Torah. Now, this results, actually, this Gemara is the basis of a remarkable position in Tosos, in Ksuvos, where we have a Tana Rabbanan, Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, Mevatlin Talmud Torah lo hotzas hameis ulahachnas kala. You can be mevatel Talmud Torah. You can stop learning Torah because you have to bury the dead. So Tosas asks a question, okay, that kosher. The Maseches Derech Eretz Zuta, the tells the story. Amar Rabbi Akiva says, "Tchilat tashmishi lifnei Chachamim." When I first began to serve the Chachamim, which we normally interpret when I first went to learn Torah at the age of 40. Pam achas, one time, hayiti mahalach baderech, I was on my way, coming to learn Torah. V'matzasi meis mitzvah, and I found a meis mitzvah, a dead body. You have to bury the unknown. Who's in charge of the burial? So when he paid palti lo dalid minim, and I took care of this. In other words, I carried this dead person for milin ad sheveti lebeit hakvarot, until I found a cemetery to bury him in. Ukvartiv, and I did it. Ukshe bati v'hertzeti dvarai lifnei Reb Lezer v'Reb Yoshu. When I came to my Rebbe's, Reb Lezer and Reb Yoshu, and I told them what was happening, Amruli al kol psiya ki'ilu shafachto dam naki. Every step you took along the way, it's as if you spilt innocent blood. So Tosas gives one answer, a technical answer, but there is another answer of the Rabbi Yehuda of Korvei, T-rates. He gives another answer. The hata mishum de bitel atzmo mishimush Talmidei Chachamim. It wasn't bitul Torah that makes him chayav. The problem is he was mevatel. In other words, you are mevatel for Talmud Torah, but not for shimush of Talmidei Chachamim. And the Rimi Korbei cites the Gemara in Brachos, the Gadol Shimusha Yosemi Talmuda. In other words, you can be mevatel Talmud Torah, you can be mevatel for a mace, and certainly for a mace mitzvah. But that's to be mevatel Talmud Torah. But this is shimush of Torah, and of course the Rimi Korbei is focusing on the word that Rabbi Akiva says that when I first was mishamesh Talmidei Chachamim. So he got it right in terms of the learning Talmud Torah, but not in terms of shimush Talmidei Chachamim. So I would like to suggest that this is exactly what Rashi means. That Yoshua, because there's something interesting here. And what is interesting in this is Yoshua goes along, but we would like to know Yoshua and Moshe are alone on the way. Moshe is on the way to Har Sinai to receive the Torah, or personally, and you would expect, we would really love to know what they're talking about. But we don't know anything. We don't know what they're talking about. We only know that Yoshua stays there the whole 40 days, and when he comes down, he's there. Why? So presumably, it's Shimush Talmidei Chachamim if it's nothing else. He wants to walk back to the camp with Moshe, together with Moshe. Whatever they'll talk about, whatever way Moshe will present himself. Perhaps he'll see the face of Moshe shining, although that won't happen till later. But how should he know what the transformation is going to be? And that's why he's there and waiting. And as it turns out, the fact that he is there, he tells Moshe Rabbeinu, he says something to Moshe Rabbeinu. And he says, there's a kol milchama in Parshas Kitiso. There must be a war. And Moshe says something. He says, it's not the voice, it's not the sound. When he gets nearer to the camp, it's not the sound. Kol anos. It's a sound of something far different, far different. And he learns, if you will, how to distinguish sounds. But we have another instance of this in Tanakh, where the Rebbe in the Talmud are going along, even when the Talmud is told by the Rebbe not to go along with him, who dissuades him. And of course, here I'm referring to, again, Elisha, whom we were introduced to in the story that I gave you, which happens later. But how does Elisha become the disciple of Eliyahu? He's a plowsman. He's a very wealthy person. Okay, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells, again at Sinai, tells Eliyahu that one of the missions, he can't stay at Sinai, he can't hide. It's in Perek Yud Tet of Malachim Aleph. And he's told he has to go back into the world, and he has a number of tasks. And one of the tasks that he's given is that you will find a certain person, okay, named Elisha, right? That Elisha ben Shafat me'avel mechola timshach lenavi tachtecha. He's going to succeed you. Anoint him as the Navi, right? And what does Eliyahu do? He comes and he finds this person, Elisha, plowing with 12 oxen, a huge, very wealthy demonstration. And Eliyahu comes to him. He doesn't speak to him. He throws his cloak upon him. And the experience, nothing is said. The experience is so meaningful that this wealthy landowner and farmer, okay, Elisha ben Shafat, he's ready to give it all up, right? And he leaves the cattle, leaves the oxen, and he runs after Eliyahu, and he says, I'm going to follow you. He's so touched by being in the presence of. So this presence is so strong, he hasn't learned a thing from him. This presence was the tashmish already, being in the presence of this, like we talk about the presence of the Talmid Chacham. Vayomer, and he says, let me go back. I want to, my father and my mother, and I'll go after you. Vayomelo, and Eliyahu says to him, Lech shuv, go back. I don't need you. What have I done for you? I haven't touched you deeply enough, right? And then it says that he does. He is touched. He's moved. Vayokam vayelech acharei Eliyahu. Vayokam vayelech, right? Just like we saw Vayokam, that he stood up. They stood up, Moshe, and they left. Okay? Acharei Elio vayisharsehu, and he serves him. It doesn't say he learned from him. Vayisharsehu. Vayisharsehu. Okay? And there is a moment where we find that the master is going on a journey. Okay? And that journey is going to be his last journey. And Eliyahu tells him specifically, I don't want you to come on the journey with me. I'm not done. I hope it's paused. Oh no, it's not paused. I'm sorry, pardon the interruption. I forgot to pause it. That journey is Eliyahu's final journey. And we're told in Malachim Beit, Perek Beit, Vayi b'halot Hashem et Eliyahu b'sara hashamayim. When Eliyahu is going to go up to heaven in the whirlwind, Vayelech Eliyahu ve'Elisha min Gilgal. They left from Gilgal. They go together as one. It doesn't say Vayelchu Eliyahu ve'Elisha. But Eliyahu says to Elisha, Shev na po. Again, echoing, right, what he told him when he was, go back. Shev na po. Don't come with me. Right? Ki Hashem shlachani ad Beit El. God is sending me to Beit El. Elisha says, no, I'm not. Chai Hashem. V'chei nafshecha im ezveka. I'm not going to abandon you. He goes to Beit El. In Beit El, the Bnei Anavim come and say, don't you know that today God is going to take your master me'al roshecha? He says, Elisha, I know. Remain quiet. Eliyahu then says, Vayomer lo Eliyahu, Elisha, shev na po. Again, don't go with me. Ki Hashem shlachani Yericho. God has sent me to Yericho. He says, no, I'm going to go. And they get to Yericho. The Bnei Anavim say to Elisha, don't you know that God is taking Elisha? He says, I know. Eliyahu says again to him, Shev na po ki Hashem shlachani hayardena. He says, I'm not leaving you. Eliyahu, they cross the Yarden, and before they cross the Yarden, Eliyahu takes his aderet, his cloak, the cloak appears again, and he hits the water, it splits, and they both pass over the Jordan. And now at this point, Eliyahu says to Elisha, Sha'al, me ma eselach b'terem ilakach. Let me ask you, what can I do for you? And Elisha asks for a double portion. And you'll look at the perek, and you'll see a double portion of the spirit of Eliyahu. And he does, in fact, right? But what is happening here is the beginning of his education. The beginning of his education is not a learning of Torah, such that he's going to come to Nevuah. The beginning of his education is just the presence. And he gets it, but he doesn't get it well enough because he has to take care of things, as important as they may be. And Eliyahu says, Shev, stay, don't. I don't want you. And he is so moved by this in some way, which is very difficult to understand, but it's the presence. He can't miss a moment of the presence. And at the end, he is still teaching him by the Shimush. He wants to go with him, which is right, just to walk with him, to talk with him. Haloch v'daber, right? But Eliyahu, one last test. Don't come with me. Don't come with me. He tells him the Gilgal, and don't come with me. He tells him Beit El, and don't come with me. He tells him Yericho, right? But he goes with him. And then finally, Eliyahu will repeat his words that were started a long time ago when he said to him, go back. Me'al sisi loch. What have I done to you if you don't want to follow me right away? And now Eliyahu asks, finally, Sha'al, now ask, Mo'eseloch b'terem elokach mimach. What can I do for you? Echoing the initial rejection, Mo'eseloch b'terem elokach mimach. That is Shimush, Talmidei Chachamim of the highest order. We don't know the specific details of Torah that he was taught, but we knew what he was teaching and about grabbing onto the moment, about being with the Rebbe, of Shimush Talmidei Chacham, of the Shimush, of the Talmud, right? Chilas Tashmishay Lifnei Chachamim, and as Rabbi Akiva has it, or as Rashi has it, the Talmud is being malave l'Rav ad mikom hagbalat tchumei hahar. Again, until the place that he could go no farther, as Elisha will go with Eliyahu, until the place that he can go no farther.